Luciana Souza, your new record coming out, The Book of Longing. It's poems that you put to music as opposed to lyrics put to music. How do you see poetry and lyrics? Are they cousins? Are they friends? Are they the same thing? Are they different things? What's the difference in a poem and a lyric?
I think lyrics can be poetry and can be poems, but I think you're given more permission. Let's say poetry has, it's finished. I think lyric can be worked on, and for me, in my case, I'm not collaborating with a living poet. Unfortunately, they were all dead except for myself. So when I'm collaborating with myself, I try to finish a poem. There's a period at the end, it's closed, it's done. I think a lyric, you can always mess with it. So that's how I would, but they definitely, lyrics can be incredibly poetic and can be poems, like any Bob Dylan song can be, can stand on its own as poetry, and can be a song as well, or Leonard, or Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, very cool. When do you find time to write poems?
When I make time to write poems. It's something that for me requires much more editing than anything else I do. Of course, if I'm writing an email, it's out, But poetry, I like to sit with it and live with it. And again, if I'm going to finish it, because I have a lot of unfinished things, little bits and pieces of things that I write, and they just live there. But if it's a poem I like to finish, if I'm going to set it to music, I like to have it done. And that takes time, because I like to go back and sleep on it and, revisit it and edit and change. And then show it to Larry, who is my, most faithful reader, really, and just a person I trust so much because he's read so much and understands words and poetry outside of lyrics. I mean, he also loves poetry on its own, and he's always happy to help and to support, but also to criticize, which is good. Mm-hmm. I need that. Yeah, I need that.
It's amazing that you're able to, live with him and work with him, and, I mean, I think this is creative couples. This question comes up a lot. Like, how is that possible? Those of us
sometimes
it
isn't. A lot of the times you just have to. One person has to be the sane person in the room and say, okay, this is not working right now. Let me exit. And that means it could be. I think what happens nowadays with people, and I think it's happened through history. My parents were married and worked together, and dealt with everything that brings. You have incredible intimacy, so you know a lot about the other person. So if you have the good sense to understand that, I know what this person is coming from today, what their day has been, then you save things. You don't say everything. You just measure yourself a little more. And it requires enormous effort, but it's not a painful kind of effort. I'm not heavy working on my marriage. I'm happy working on my marriage.
Great.
It's a real joy to live with someone who's intelligent, who cares about others, who has a great character, who has values that I admire and strive for. And I think he feels the same. I know he feels the same way about me. So it's a real equal marriage in that way. Of course, I do much more of the cooking and let's not get into that. And then, the resources thing. We have a child, so it becomes really dealing with scheduling. But if you get good at that, which now we're so much better than we were at the beginning, then it's a joy, and you just laugh at, when you find a problem, you just laugh at it because you know that you're better than that.
Great. Is there a poet or a poem that you have not done yet that you would like to do?
Yeah, there's something I've been hiding from myself or avoiding. I haven't set Brazilian poetry to music very much. I live here. I feel so of this country now, of the United States. I've spent more than half my life here now, and I communicate in English 90% of the time, and do some singing in Portuguese and talking to family members in Portuguese, but the rest of the time I'm really living in this language. And so I find now that it's much more of an effort for me to go to Portuguese. I have my poets that Carlos Drummond de Andrade, who's my poet, the poet my mother loved and knew, and I love him dearly and deeply. And maybe someday, at some point, I'll get to it. I have the poems that I've marked and saved, so that would be an amazing project to do. But I'd like to do that in Brazil. There's also the geography of it. I'd like to do a Brazilian project in Brazil with Brazilians, people who would get it, where no translation would be needed.